Everyone for stopping by and welcome to today's webinar, the 3Ds of the Triangle to Build an Empire with your hosts, Kristen Cole and Joe Quattrucci. Please note this meeting is being recorded and will be available within 24 hours on the MAPS Group YouTube channel. I will share that link in the chat momentarily. Currently, everyone is on mute. However, Kristen and Joe do value group participation. So we ask that if you have any questions for the coaches, please type them into the chat box located in the taskbar at the bottom of your screen. Following the meeting, if you have any questions about today's call or group coaching programs in general, please email us at fasttrack, FASTRACK @kw.com. That's all for me. Kristen and Joe, take it away.
Hey, so glad to be with you all today. And I know some people couldn't make it. It's being recorded, which is awesome. We want to show you a triangle today that you don't see very often during this last 6 to 12 months, but Gary developed what he called the triangle to building an empire. And when you look at the triangle, we're going to bring it up here for you to see, it's really defined by 3 different pieces. And that is designing your world or your business, defining it, what is it going to look like, and then driving it. So today we wanted to break down this triangle for you. We could talk about it forever. I think we did at Mega Camp for a couple hours.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot to unpack in here. So for instance, when you start at the bottom of the triangle, which is the foundation, the most important piece, and as Gary would say, take ESO a couple of years and learn as much as you can, because this foundational piece of the triangle is mega important. So what goes into designing or your business? And I think one thing Gary wants you to also be thinking about as you do that, designing it for disruption.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you're calling this a sort of a business design, right? So whether or not you're building a sales team or you're in leadership building a market center, this is really a business concept that can be applied to any outcome that you're pursuing in your business.
Right. So 1 and 2 are really the design phase. Number 1, researching your opportunity. Sometimes people see problems and Gary would say those are opportunities.
Right.
So, in researching your opportunity, you're going to look at, what are the threats? What are the opportunities in the marketplace that you have at that moment? Because we know that real estate is super hyper local. So researching your opportunity, meaning you're benchmarking and looking at trends and looking at what other people are or aren't doing to find an opportunity.
Right. Where are people in my market capitalizing? Where are they falling short? Where's the opportunity that I can then go in and fill that gap? Because we all know that we're going to get paid in direct proportion to the amount of value we add to the marketplace. And that often means solving a problem.
It always means solving a problem.
Right.
And this is super important. Like if you want to take an idea to Gary Keller, you better have shown him that you have researched the opportunity and that you've come up with a simple solution to a big problem.
Yeah. I mean, this could be as simple as, hey, if I'm looking at a lead generation option, how many houses are in a particular neighborhood? What is the average turnover of those houses? What is the average sales price? So we can get right down into some of the specific data before we decide to take a certain business approach by really doing our diligence and researching the opportunity as thoroughly as possible.
And then what you're really looking for an opportunity that no one else is paying attention to. Oftentimes, everybody just goes and does what everybody else is doing. And Gary says sometimes going in the opposite direction, finding a disruptive value proposition or a disruptive opportunity that no one's paying attention to, and typically it looks like a big problem,
right,
is really the way to go. So be thinking about that right now. As you know, this is, as of today, 2 years since we started to slow the spread of COVID.
Right.
So there were a lot of opportunities that people initially thought were big problems.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of agents that found those opportunities. So as you're designing your empire, you want to make sure that you really thought a lot about that.
Yeah. A couple of sources around that. Obviously we use the MLS in order to research our hyper local market and the opportunities that may exist there. We use the National Association of Realtors. They do a ton of great reports. Who are the people that you could talk to or learn from that is a part of your research before you choose to pick up a particular opportunity? So this is really a kind of a wide umbrella.
It is. I mean, just going back as we have and listening to Gary's vision speech 5 times.
So good.
Really studying the slides, you see opportunity in there, don't you?
Just by listening to him explain what he sees happening in the market and all the factors that influence the real estate market, you start to see the opportunity to, oh gosh, I need to tell my buyers this. Oh geez, I need to tell my sellers this. And then that informs your strategy.
Right. And then when we think about creating your disruptive value proposition, Gary would say, if you're going to build a moat around your business, that your value proposition to your buyers and sellers, to your leadership, better have a moat around it. And it better be disruptive. And because we all know there's a bazillion lanes of lead generation we could go down.
Sure.
But what are the best ones to go down right now? And how do you make it so disruptive? No one can ever get in between you and your client.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So they stay sticky to you. So in looking at disruptive value propositions, you're going to be looking at your systems, your lead generation, your organizational chart, your business plan, all of that stuff. When you're creating a disruptive value proposition, becomes really important in building the foundation of your business. You want to build it so that no one can ever take your business away from you.
Well, and all those systems and everything that you just mentioned goes right into what is the customer's experience working with you? Right? How are they going to feel throughout the process? Because we all know the expectation of the client is to get to the closing table. That can't be the foundation of our value proposition. We have to then build on top of, well, how can we get there as seamlessly as possible and provide the highest level of experience to our client as possible, such that they would never ever want to use anybody else.
Right. And then when you have figured out how you're going to actually walk that out, you want to put a business plan around it.
Absolutely.
So part of creating the disruptive value proposition is then taking your disruptive systems, your disruptive models, your disruptive lead generation, and putting it into your GPS, your business plan that you're going to follow this year in order to get to the result that you want.
Well, I love that you talked to, you brought up the systems again. I think, if you're in leadership or if you're even growing your own team, when we say disruptive value proposition, you mentioned what is the value proposition to your leadership? Why would they join your team versus another team or your brokerage instead of a different brokerage? What are they going to get? And I'm not just referring to things like leads, right? Or better commission splits. We're talking about things like culture, which we'll get to here in a second, training, coaching, support, all of the different benefits that Keller Williams offices provide. That's the foundation of your disruptive value proposition.
So, and when we go through the scale your business to expand, which really just means grow, we talk about the 4 different value propositions. It's not just to clients.
Right.
There's several of them. And then when you put this into a business plan, and you've got your disruptive value proposition for your, like, as we said, the systems, the models, the lead gen, then the reason Gary says you're going to spend so much time on number 1 and number 2 is because now you're going to test those systems and then you're going to tweak them. And then you're going to test them again. And then you're going to, make sure that you can control that business. Then you're going to scale it, see if it scales, because not everything scales.
Right.
And then you're going to see if you can expand it.
Right.
And then automate it. That's a lot of steps.
Sure.
So that's why Gary says you'll spend, if you really want to build a big business, whatever that business is. And he says it can be anything inside of Keller Williams. We're just a distribution network. What do you want to distribute?
Exactly.
You're going to spend a lot of time on number 1 and number 2. And that's our scaling your business to grow, to expand, spends a ton of time on number 1 and number 2.
Right. And the other takeaway that I just sort of took from what you just said is the first time you design the business, it may not be exactly what it's going to look like in a month, a year, or 5 years from today. So you want to design it like you just said, and then you begin to test it. And that may evolve the design of your business. That may evolve the way that you create your disruptive value proposition, because some things will work great and you want to double down. Some things will not work out quite the way you wanted them to. And so you may push pause. And so it's sort of an evolution as far as crafting and fine tuning that value proposition over time.
And also keeping in mind that sometimes you can be thrown a monkey wrench into your business like COVID, and you've got to go back and look and see if you need to make any changes in order to still deliver your disruptive value proposition in a business as usual, in a very unusual way.
All of the bad that came with COVID, it was really cool to see the way that some companies in a variety of different industries were able to pivot their business's value proposition in order to keep up with the demand of the market because of COVID.
That's exactly right.
And that's true for real estate agents, and that's true for restaurants and a variety of other industries. And so it's a great example of how you may have to pivot on the fly. But
what I love about the model itself is that it allows you to pivot within it. I mean, you create all of this, and then all you're doing is making tweaks. It doesn't mean we stop lead generation. It just may mean it looks differently than it's ever looked before. Example, there was a time when we were not doing live open houses. So we had to learn how to do them via Zoom, doing them at a very high level, which we were able to accomplish. So lead generation didn't stop just because something that we couldn't control came in our environment.
Right.
What happened was what we can control, we pivoted to make sure that we could deliver it no matter what the environment.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about number 3, because when you talk about steps 3 and 4, that's really the defining the business. That's where your culture comes into place. So talk to us a little bit about how important culture is in creating an empire.
Yeah, I love this part of the conversation because as soon as you make your first hire, culture now becomes an extraordinarily relevant part of the conversation. Because if culture, let's say it like this, there's always a culture, whether it's intentional or not. And in absence of culture, I heard somebody say at family reunion, what typically people tend to do is start thinking about themselves. And so in order to avoid that, we can create a very intentional culture because people are more often leaving organizations that they feel like they're not contributing to, and they feel like they're not moving in the right direction with. It typically has nothing to do with money. And so by creating a culture, this is not only going to attract like-minded people to whatever it is that you're pursuing, but it's going to help retain them there because they work in an environment and they collaborate with a group of people that are moving in the same direction. It's that teamwork, it's that camaraderie, it's that tribe, so to speak, that we all as human beings desire to be a part of.
Well, and I'm glad you brought that up because part of this culture piece and mapping out your business is also creating the vision. And the vision has to be tied to what you're creating, not to the person itself. So when you're mapping out your business and you're thinking about your culture, what's your greater cause that you're asking everyone to be part of?
Right.
What's that vision look like? A lot of people, talk to us about agents and personnel that turn over a lot. And we can kind of trace it back to this right here, the defining part of their business. They maybe haven't been purposeful about their culture, because you have culture whether or not you decide to or not.
Exactly.
There is culture.
Right.
But maybe they haven't mapped out their vision in such a way that they can articulate it to the people in the company. So those two pieces, defining and shaping your culture and mapping out your vision for where you're going is really important. It's the glue.
Yeah, it really is. And if you're not even sure where to get started with culture, take a look at Keller Williams Realty. I mean, look at the way that Mo Anderson, right? In the creation of the Y4C2Ts, the creation of the mission, the vision, the values. And that is really the foundational bedrock of creating a culture. So as Kristen just said, what is your mission? What is your vision that you can sort of adopt and modify from Keller Williams to fit your own personality in your own vision for whatever cause it is that's near and dear to your heart, and use that sort of as the foundational starting point to creating your culture.
And also in mapping out your business, when you're thinking about your vision, the other piece of it is you're going to actually look at the economic model behind it to make sure that you're going to be testing that to make sure that you've actually got a business model that will work. So part of it also is just looking at the economics of what you're planning out. Does this make sense? Will this work? Does it have a proof of concept?
Right.
So, this defining piece is just as important as the foundation.
Right.
Because you can have a great idea for a coffee store and the coffee costs $20 a cup and it's not going to make economic sense.
Right.
So it's important to not only have the vision and the culture, but then to be making sure that you're also mapping out, with the end in mind, does this have an economic model that works?
Yeah. And on the opposite end of that spectrum of the example you gave, if you're not making any profit, well, then you're not going to stay in business either. So I love, whether you love numbers or not, understanding the economics of your business and how many appointments would lead to how many closings would lead to how much profit is a conversation we have to start to get comfortable with as business owners, especially as we begin to scale. Hoping for profit at the end of the month, the quarter of the year is obviously not a strategy any of us want to tap into.
Right. Absolutely. And you hear me say it all the time. Everything's just a math problem. So just figure out the math behind the business that you want to run, because not all leads cost the same amount of money. Not all leads produce the same amount of profit.
Right.
And so just making sure that you're thinking through the economics of it. And you're also thinking through, is this lead generation lever one that someone can take away from me tomorrow? And I'm not saying that you shouldn't go buy a lead, but what I am saying, the majority of your business should be built on something that you can control,
right?
Rather than buying leads from someone that can control your business.
Right. One of the questions I get a lot, Kristen, around mapping the business is, sometimes I don't even know what the first step is. So how would you respond to somebody that's like, I want to map a big business. I have some sort of vision, but I'm not even really sure where to get started next.
First, I would ask them, what's your financial freedom number? Where are you trying to get to? Always begin with the end in mind.
Right.
So, and again, it's just a math problem. If you know that your financial freedom number, that if you can wake up and have $100,000 worth of passive income, meaning unearned, meaning you don't have to go out and trade time for money every day, then you can work that backwards to determine how much money you have to have set aside so that with an average income, appreciation, that you know how sustainable that is.
Right.
And so I always think begin with the end in mind, and to make sure that, where you're trying to get to is going to get you where you want to go.
Yeah. I love that you said that sort of that reverse engineering process. So starting with a someday goal, turning that into a 5-year goal, a 1-year goal, a 1-month goal. What do I have to do this week and today to begin moving forward toward that outcome? Yeah.
And I remember when we were kind of looking at that at the beginning of the year in our organization, and when we looked at the goal, it looked huge.
Yeah.
But when we chunked it down, it was very doable.
Exactly. 24 units, 100 units, 2,000 units a year could seem like a lot. But when you break it down to, well, geez, that's just one appointment a week. If I go on one appointment a week and convert 50%, I can get to 24 closed units a year.
What did Gary say? If you do 2 kitchen table meetings a week, you can have $1 million business.
There you go. And that allows our brain to say, hey, this is doable.
This is doable.
I'm willing to put in the energy because it feels like I can succeed.
Right. And so while we might spend a year or two on the first 2 steps, if you will, in designing and the foundation of our company, you might also spend equal amount of time, defining it such that it's, when you drive it, it's going to get you where you want to go. Right. And this is so important. That's why I think Gary created this empire triangle. Because it really walks you through sequentially the steps that you need to go through. It's sequential, not simultaneous. This is something that if you want a big business, you cannot get there without building the foundation first. So when you get to the drive portion, which is really number 5 and 6, and you have a large business, you're going to need people.
Right.
And those people are going to need coached internally. Right.
Nobody builds an empire alone.
No one does. And so making sure, do you understand the career visioning process at such a level that the chances of you making a bad hire are minimized, right?
So for anybody that doesn't know, the career visioning process walks you through exactly how to find and go through the interview process to hire talented people for your organization. So if you're in a position where you want to start hiring now or sometime this year, career visioning would definitely be a class to check out.
Yeah, because the bigger your business gets, the only way for it to be sustainable is with great people.
Right.
So are you running a training? It says there, run a people development company. You've got to be able to develop your people internally.
Right.
And because that's the best way to grow is internally.
Sure.
To promote people from within who already believe what you believe in terms of culture.
Right.
So do you have a company internally that can make sure that you are developing people from the bottom up?
Well, in the short term, we can obviously take advantage of our, PC coaching programs in our market center. We can obviously take advantage of MAPS coaching and BOLD and all the different options offered through Keller Williams while you're building the foundation to be able to create your own training and coaching system someday.
And probably the biggest development needs to be you as a person. Your own personal development plan. Good point. You've got to work on you harder than you work on anyone else in order for you to be the leader that will attract other like-minded people. Right.
And people are really, I think back to the leads, listing, leverage triangle that we all know so well. And leverage means a lot of things. One of those things are the ability to leverage to the people that you've decided to hire. And I would say that there's a big difference between leverage and delegation. Right? Delegation is telling somebody to do a task and they can do that task no more, no less. Leverage is when you've trained somebody through the career visioning process in 30, 60, 90 to be able to own a division, own a lane in your company and be able to really take control of it and take that off of your plate entirely.
Absolutely. And there is a big difference between the two. One is a highly decentralized organization. One is highly centralized. Most real estate agents, probably, I think Gary said 95% of them run a highly centralized organization. When you get to this level, it is almost impossible for you to grow beyond that level without making it decentralized, which means You need great people who are going to own their
Yeah.
particular job or the particular division.
Right.
And it's got to come off of your plate.
Leaders who can lead other leaders at some point in your business as it
Right.
grows.
Yeah. And then the final piece of the triangle, of course, is managing for profit and disruption.
That would be an important piece of this puzzle for sure.
Super important. Profit first. And because if you're not making a profit, I don't know why you want to go through all this.
Right.
But managing for profit so that you can go do additional things. We talk about a lot, in this triangle of growing a very big business. It's our original hub in Wasilla, Alaska, that produces so much profit that it allowed us to go into other territories and grow additional businesses with other great people. And that is so key. And the one thing in designing a big business that Gary never wants us to take our eye off is our original hub.
Right.
Because it's the profit center that allows everything else to happen.
Right.
And so we definitely manage to that. And we also manage to disruption. There's things that we can't control. And however, there's always the things that we can control. We have to pay attention to those, and we have to find a disruptive way of staying in the business, being relevant in the business. And I think that's what Gary's talking about is how are you going to stay relevant in the business when, let's say in Arizona, there's 78,000 licensed agents. How do you stay relevant in that big pool?
Sure.
You've got to be disruptive. And that means, we sit around thinking a lot about how we can actually make sure that we're so disruptive. No one can get between us and our database.
And I would say that this whole conversation today is an example of how you as a business owner are going to start to become more disruptive, because how many other real estate agents are thinking at this depth as it pertains to being a business owner?
A lot of times people ask us, well, what does disruption look like? And I always go back to the McDonald's French fries, right?
Right.
Everyone, if you're going to eat French fries, you might as well eat hot, super greasy with a lot of salt, right? McDonald's French fries. But their business really was disrupted. They disrupted everyone else when they came out with the McDonald's French fries, and everybody just thought it was the potato. It wasn't the potato that was disruptive. What they found after a lot of figuring it out was how the potato was cured. And they cured it differently than everyone else. And that's what made those French fries so awesome. So that was their disruptive value proposition. You don't go to McDonald's typically for the cheeseburgers.
The French fries, for sure.
For sure. So what is that piece of your business that can be so disruptive that it really builds a moat around your company that people can never, you will always be relevant in the marketplace.
So, Kristen, what are your thoughts around the mindset of money and the way that people approach this from, because we all have different backgrounds and we all have different beliefs in money. What do you say to people around the mindset of money?
I think a lot. Well, we know by talking to as many people as we do that there's a lot of folks that have a mindset around money is bad. And I remember even having a little bit of heartburn over articulating to people that I wanted to make more money because I thought I'd be perceived as just a greedy person.
Right.
And I remember Mo Anderson really set me straight on this. And she said, well, it's one thing to earn $1 million, but if you want to give $1 million, Kristen, that means you need to make a lot of money.
Right.
And she said, part of our culture is productivity.
Sure.
Part of our culture is profit.
Yeah.
And so once she told me that, I just felt like she gave me permission to not have to apologize anymore for wanting to be profitable,
right?
Wanting to make money. Money's good for the good that money can do. And there's a lot of good. I was just on a podcast yesterday with My House, which is for homeless youth. And we were just talking about how, it's always starts small in a community, but there's a lot of good that money can do with your excess profits. And everybody has I think it would be hard to find somebody that didn't have a charity that was near and dear to their heart. And so for me, excess profit, because Gary says you can only buy more, money's only, buying more stuff is just stuff.
Right.
There's a point at which, you want to have experiences with the people you love and you want to give back. And so profit to me is a great goal.
Well, and that goes right back into culture, at least in our case, it does, because the people that we attract to our business have that philanthropic heart. They have that cause that they're passionate about. And oftentimes we get to celebrate the money that's been donated and the good that's been done as a result of the profit that we've created.
Right.
And that's at all different levels, right?
Right.
It could be hundreds of thousands of dollars. And for other people, it could be, just providing time and providing resources to a cause that's important to them.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Joe, we only have a few minutes left. Let's see if anyone out there has a question about this empire building triangle that Gary has designed, because I'll say one more thing. When we go in the room with Gary Keller, which it used to be just a couple times a year, and then during COVID, he met with us every single month via Zoom. He said, we don't need to talk about leads and leverage, or you wouldn't even be in this room. What we really need to talk about, the other L, leads, leverage, and
listings,
or listings, leverage.
Leads, listings, leverage.
We need to talk about leverage. Sorry. We don't need to talk about leads, and we don't need to talk about listings, or you wouldn't be in the room. He says, for the rest of your life, we're going to be talking about people, because you cannot build a big business without great people.
And then when you take a look at what he's done, I mean, I don't know him as well as you do, but I imagine he's been pouring into his people, ever since the creation of Keller Williams. And really I imagine what he does, that's his 20%, I imagine.
It's his secret sauce for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
So that time flew right by. I can't believe it's already 11:27. Let's open it up for any questions. Either use the chat box or raise your hand. Any questions on the design, define, drive triangle that we've gone over today? Any comments? Anything you heard today that made sense? Anything that you can take action on leaving here today? Yeah, Robin.
I thought it was fabulous, very inspiring, very knowledgeable. I am one of the business growth advisors, so I work with MAPS coaching, but I work with agents and TLs and OPs and everybody. So this is the language I need to really capture to be able to speak more to it. Thank you very much.
Love that, Robin.
Yes, thank you. Kristen, let's talk just for a quick moment with the last 2 minutes here about the upcoming Scale Your Business class.
So, we really dissect each of these steps over 8 weeks. So once a week, we meet for an hour, we dive deep into these different topics, then we give some homework so that you can actually start working on designing, defining, and driving your business. And the thing I love the most about it is you have access to all of those recordings for 60 days after the class is over. So if there's a piece you need to go back and re-listen to and work on some more, it's just an extra benefit to having those recordings available. The class is going to start April the 13th. It starts on a Wednesday, and it's 1 hour per week for 8 weeks. Again, there's a little bit of homework, but it really dives deep into every piece in this triangle to help you actually not just be a hearer of all of this, but be a doer,
right?
To actually start to walk it out so that you can design your empire the way that you want to, but within the parameters that we're going to help you understand, how to build a business that's worth owning for sure.
Right. So this would be for agents that are maybe solo agents, small teams, big teams, market center leadership. This is really sort of all inclusive. Anybody that wants to begin to take more intentional action around building a business.
And people ask me all the time, well, as a single agent, why would I take this class? I would just say that it's not just about you, whether or not you're a single agent or you have agents on your team, but this also will dictate how you interact with your clients in your business. So I have never met anyone that was a single agent that took this class that didn't like it.
Sure.
And then also, I think it's really super helpful. I'm an OP of 5 market centers. It is really helpful to understand this so that you can help the agents in your market centers build their empires.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So if I'm sure Tegan probably is going to type it in the chat box, how you sign up for it. It's scaleyourbusiness.co. There's also, you can go to the MAP group coaching program and just click on that, this group coaching maps or scale your business to expand.
Right. Yep. And that's already in the chat box. So there it is for you guys to click on. Any last questions before we wrap up? We want to be respectful of your time. It's 11:30. Any last minute comments or questions? All right, Graham, anything from you, sir?
Oh, y'all are the best. Everything's good. Yeah, we got the link in there. April 13th through June 1st. I hope everybody that came today is able to look and read more and learn more and sign up.
Thanks so much, everybody.
It was a pleasure. Thank you, guys.
Have a great rest of your
Thanks.
week.